And this is going to be by a graduate student from the University of Texas, Brownsville, another student of Dr. Hicks, and she is doing her thesis work on the trophic effects of beach cast wrack. This sounds like Hicks. Hicks had something to do with the naming of this. Removal on swash zone communities. Crista. Stubblefield.
Thank you.
And there's the pointer. Figure it all out.
All right.
She won't have to figure it out.
Hi there. So this is pretty much what I'm doing my thesis work on down there in Brownsville.
You need to use the microphone.
Sorry, I'll stand more over here. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a bunch of different organisms that live there in the swash zone. Swash zone is defined from where the water maximally rises on the beach with each breaking wave to the maximal retreat. So that area that's just got water washing back and forth over it, where the little boys go out there and like to do the skimboarding thing. We've got several different organisms that hang out in that area. They're benthic organisms. Down here, oh, wrong button, sorry. Okay, down here we have the Donex, which is the coquina clam or surf clam that burrows in the area. There's a couple different species of that live there. Up here is a mole crab, Emerita. There's 3 different species of Emerita that live there. And here we have a ghost shrimp. The ghost shrimp is what initially got me interested in this. My last semester of my undergraduate degree had to do a bioseminar project, and I had taken coastal ecology the summer before, and it was the best class I'd ever taken. At this time, I was thinking, oh, well, I'm going to do something biomedical science with my life, you know. But every weekend I was at the beach, beachcombing, looking for sea beans and whatever else I could find at the beach. So I took the ghost shrimp project, and I went out and I just did distribution study on raked and unraked beaches there on South Padre Island. And what I found was I had a whole bunch of zeros in my data table for my raked beaches. And all I did was I didn't extract them because they're difficult to find, and I didn't want to be killing a whole bunch of little critters. So I just counted the burrow densities that they made. And I had literally probably 3 or 4 burrows in all of the samples that I had counted on raked beaches. But when I went up north on the beach of South Padre, I found just burrows all over the place. It was highly significant differences. And so that's what first got me interested in this. Also in the swash zone, we do have different birds that come down and forage in the swash zone. And then we've got birds that just hang out and rest in between different fishing bouts. A lot of these benthic organisms here are filter feeding organisms that, like the mole crab, they're pretty cool. They've got these little feather-like appendages. They stick up in the air, and when the water washes over them, they fling them around like this, and then they wipe them through their mouth to eat the little particulate matter. So they all have their own little mechanism, and they're all highly adapted to living in this harsh dynamic environment. They have to deal with the tides migrating in and out. They have to deal with the wave action, how that fluctuates. And then they also have to deal with when the tide goes out, they have to either move or they have to adapt to a drier condition. So it's very dynamic, and they're neat little creatures. Then in the Wrack that washes up, which is, of course, primarily Sargassum, we have a lot of different creatures that live in that, and we've heard about those earlier today, from different fish to nudibranchs and crabs and all the different jellyfish associated with them. Then we also have some barnacles that attach to different substrates. Here we have a plastic barrel that washed up on the beach. And so those are all the different organisms that live in the Wrack and get washed up with the seaweed. Then we have the critters that want to come out and forage in the Wrack line. So we've got different birds that forage in the Wrack. I personal observation going out there, the sanderlings, they'll stay in the swash, but a couple of them will run up into the rack line and pick around at the different amphipods that are up there, the beach hoppers. Also, we've got coyotes out on the natural areas of the beach, and sometimes you even see them in the city limits. I've seen them on my street, and I live on the bay. But they'll come down in the evening or early morning looking for different stuff, dead fish that have washed up, or even birds that have died on the beach, and they scavenge for that type of stuff. There's terrestrial crabs that feed in the rack line, and then there's the flies and beetles, insects of that nature. So with that, my primary objectives are to compare the abundance, diversity, and biomass of the benthic swash zone communities on rack and rack removed beaches of Padre Island. I'm also going to compare avian abundance, richness, and usage of the rack on swash zone, rack line and swash zone of rack and rack removed beaches. Like I said, this is my proposed thesis project. I haven't actually started collecting data yet. We're working on ferreting out all the different statistical analysis stuff before I get started. So my sample methods, the study area is going to be Padre Island, which we have divided into north and south regions, with this area north of the dredged Mansfield Channel, which is right down here. That defines my northern region from Port Mansfield north up to Corpus Christi. And then my south region is from Port Mansfield south to the Brazos-Santiago Pass, which is right there at Port Isabel. With the differences between the areas that I'm sampling, the raking regimes are a little bit different that they use on South Padre Island versus here on North Padre Island. So I'm going to take that into account and hope to see some differences there as well. For my benthic data collection, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have 5 sites within each region. So, wrong button. Okay. So in the northern region, I'll go to a racked beach and a rack removed beach, and there will be 5 sites on each of those beaches, or 5 plots. Sorry, the wording here gets kind of jumbled. So this would be an example of what one of my plots would look like. So say I'm on a rack-covered beach. I will have 5 of these plots which measure 10 meters by 4 meters, and this is going to be placed in the middle of the swash zone. Now the swash zone is very dynamic. The width of the swash zone varies upon the winds that day, the tides at that time, and several other conditions. So on direct observation of the day and the time that I'm on the beach sampling, I'll measure the swash zone, and then within the middle of that, I'll place my plot, which will be held with, some rebar and a string grid system. So within the plot, I'm going to have each meter square, I'll take 4 benthic core samples using a cylindrical PVC coring device and inserted, to like 10 centimeter depth. And then those cores will be placed into a 0.5 millimeter mesh bag. And then all the sand will be rinsed out. And then the specimens will be fixed and preserved so that I can sort them out later. I will identify all of the species and then take a dry weight biomass reading. And my plan is to get some samples done the end of this month and then again in August for all of my locations. So in total, I will have 400 samples for each site or each region. So 200 at each racked beach and 200 at each rack removed beach in each region. So after May and August has concluded, I'll have a total of 1,600 samples. Then for my avian data, this part has slightly delayed me because this was just recently added. I'm going to, within the same plots that I collect my benthic data, I'll be going out and I'll flag out the areas, and I'll sit down and I'll observe the birds, identifying which bird, which species it is, and what area they're going to be in, as far as is it a swash zone area, a rack line area, or the back beach behind the rack line, and what is that bird doing there? Is it actively foraging, or is it resting? Is it hanging out? Is it fighting with other birds? Try to quantify what the bird is doing in that region, and abundance and species, and I'll be collecting that data at the same time, or not the same time, but within, hopefully the same day that I collect the benthic samples, if not the next day, but the same exact plot areas. For my benthic data, I'm going to use the primer software package to do an analysis of similarities. It's a two-way factorial analysis, and it'll be comparing rack versus rack removed beaches and the upper and lower swash zones. So on this quadrat, what I'll do is I'll divide right down the middle here, and this would be the upper swash zone and this would be the lower swash zone. The reason I'm doing that is because some species of benthic organisms they prefer the lower swash area, desiccation resistant, so they need the moisture more than the upper regions so they can stay closer to the water. Let's see, and then the plots will be nested within the beaches. For the avian data, we're going to do an analysis of variance and also some refraction to assess the richness within the communities. And another thing that I would like to do for the benthic data is, I just read about it, is a K dominance curve, in which I'll plot the abundance and the biomass. And hopefully I'll be able to see the relationship between where we have a lot of high abundance in some species, they actually have a very low biomass because they're very small. These species tend to be R-selected species, which are more opportunistic, and their communities tend to rebound a lot faster when there's an environmental stress. So in this case, the stress would be the removal of the rack. And other species that are K-selected tend to, they're not as opportunistic. So they have a higher biomass per individual. So a low abundance and a high biomass, but they don't respond as well to stressful environments. So I'm very interested to see how that comes out. The results, I'm hoping that my results will show the impact of rack removal on the energy flow from marine to terrestrial systems. The sargassum, as it washes in, it breaks down into dissolved organic matter and particulate organic matter as a food source for these filter-feeding organisms. And in turn, these organisms are food source for other terrestrial things, such as the birds and then the coyotes, and it's all an inflow in this area that really doesn't have much primary production. So I'm interested to see how that affects it, and hopefully, this can impact some of the practices. I know here on within the National Seashore, they've used Dr. Wither's previous study to manage their practices a little bit better, and so I'm hoping to affect that in South Padre Island as well, where in a lot of areas within the city limits, it's raked every single day, regardless of how much seaweed is there or not. They just take it all away. So that's what I'm looking for. And on this, of course, I have Dr. Hicks helping me out, and also Dr. Linder, which is our new ornithologist, is helping me with the avian part of it. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
On your plots in the different areas,
Yes.
are you going to be able to figure out pretty close to this is the same plot place?
Yes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use GPS so that I know what the coordinates are each time I sample. That way I'm going to the same area in May and the same area in August. And also, if I don't get to do the birds the same exact day as I do the benthic data, then I'll be able to go to the same spot and do that. Yes, sir.
Are you going to be working in the shell beaches at all?
And pardon me, where?
In the shell beaches, are you going to be working in the shell beaches on Padre Island at all?
Big shell and little shell?
Yeah.
I have not planned to.
Okay, so you're just going to be on the plain sand beaches?
Yes.
Okay, the reason I asked that is the grain sizes there could make a huge difference.
Yeah, with the burrowing of, yeah,
Right.
definitely. No, I'm going to stay just in the sandy areas, and if I had it my way, I would be doing more extensive sampling on the southern portion of North Padre Island, but because of my transportation limitations, I can't do that.
That's an awful lot of samples you have to deal with already.
Yes, it is, but sometimes you got to do that. Blue shirt?
I think you're going to find significant changes in the ranking of South Padre beaches when you go there.
Yes, I know that they are working to make some different changes. I've heard that they are currently they're not raking up close by the dunes anymore, which I have personally seen evidence of, but they're still raking down by the water's edge more. So I've heard a lot of conflicting things, so I'm waiting to see how that affects my study as far as also, the practices there are different from the north practices, so I'm looking to see what I can find out about that. Yes.
Will you figure out the day 3 days after they scraped it, or?
Well, what I'm going on is that in the Padre Island National Park, they have a very fixed raking regime that they rake once weekly from May till the end of the Sargassum season. So their raking regime is very fixed in place. This is how it's done. I have tried to contact Cameron County to find out if they have that structure in there, and I have not been successful in that thus far. But just from personal observation, it's I used to work on the beach in the past doing umbrellas and chairs, banana boats, that kind of stuff. And South Padre Island, they actually, for the individuals that set up the umbrellas, they made a rule because of me that you couldn't go out there and set up your umbrellas until 9 a.m. so that they could allow for the raking of the beach in a safe manner. Because it is hot, there is no wind in the middle of July. You go out there to set up umbrellas, it is brutal. So I'd get out there at 7 o'clock in the morning, right when the sun was coming up, to avoid that. Plus, it took me a little longer than some of the other guys.
I think you just made your contact with Cameron County, right?
Yes,
There we go.
yeah, with Cameron County, and I know our representative, but you'll be doing a presentation tomorrow
Yes.
on the way we maintain our beach.
Yes.
And how often we rake the seaweed.
Mm-hmm.
So, you feel free to give us a call.
That would be wonderful.
Talk afterwards. We'll do that.
Sounds good. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Also, you got the city manager and stuff right here too, so when it comes to
Yeah.
Okay, let's
Yeah,
talk
with
stinky
contacts
flies,
all
or
the
I'm
time.
sorry, in the decaying sargassum.
Uh-huh.
And then you get I've seen 3 types of flies in there. And there's the big horse flies, and they'll land on you.
Mhm.
Flies. Then there's the medium house flies, and they're just a health risk. But it's the little
The little gnat, kind of?
And they bite you, but you can't. It's like an insidious thing. You don't even see them. They're just eating the.
Yeah, I'm not going to sample insects. I'm not primarily interested in the insects. I'm going to just be looking at the birds foraging in that region of the beach.
What kind of insecticide do you recommend when you lay your beach towel down on that decaying bed of soft sargassum?
That's up to you and what you want to put on your own skin.
That sargassum is almost better to lay your towel on because at least then it's only mostly bad.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.